Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us around the world, and welcome to this, the first of IntraFish's digital events for 2021, our Global Farmed Shrimp Forum. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. We much appreciate it. I'm Rachel Mutter. I'm one of the editors at IntraFish, and I will be moderating the event today. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers and panelists for you, and together I know they're going to give you some great insight and hopefully some lively discussion in our panel on the challenges and opportunities faced by the global farmed shrimp sector, I guess particularly in light of last year's disruptions. I will start with a quick note to thank our sponsors, our co-host Nicovita, part of shrimp feed producer VitaPro, and Unifood Technic. Together they've enabled us to make this event free, and you'll be able to find some of their handouts on this On24 platform that we're operating on. If you scroll down, I think under the main screen, you'll see some PDFs you can download. And we'll also be hearing from VitaPro's business development manager, Alan Cooper, a little later in the program. Also on this platform, while we're here, you will see our IntraFish Twitter feed that my colleagues are no doubt busily filling up with tweets from the event. If you are also a tweeter, is that the word? Then you can use the hashtag IFShrimp21 to follow along with the event and tweet yourself if you wish to. So, the farmed shrimp industry. At IntraFish, we have a conscious focus on the two most important segments of the aquaculture industry as we see it, salmon and shrimp. But of course, the two couldn't be more different. Salmon is fairly consolidated, it's becoming rapidly more value-added, and it boasts many large listed global companies with, well, until 2020 perhaps, pretty predictable markets and supply. Shrimp, on the other hand, is fragmented, it's commodity-based, it's disease-prone, and it's largely unprofessionalised, at least at the farming stage, where many small, independent farmers supply much bigger and more professionalised processes. This model of sourcing from co-opted small-scale producers has added a complexity to the supply chain that is not suffered in most other parts of the seafood industry. Add to that shrimp travels thousands of miles to markets in the US, Europe, and China, oftentimes not from the most local source of supply, and you have a challenging issue of traceability and control. But things are changing. Over the last couple of years, we've seen exciting, new and affordable technologies using AI, blockchain, IoT, that are all working to make the industry more efficient and profitable for farmers, and supply therefore more predictable for processors and markets. We've also seen developments in nutrition, in the take-up of functional feeds that enable disease resistance, stronger growth and better water quality, and of the real possibilities of alternative ingredients that could contribute to a more sustainable footprint overall. We have, of course, also seen the pandemic, need I remind anyone, with its huge logistics challenges and the upending of the food service market that vast quantities of the shrimp sector have so heavily come to rely upon. Two colleagues of mine just wrote last week about all the containers that have been stuck in ports, massively driving up freight costs, with a shortage of cold storage facilities further complicating the supply chain. Some sectors of the industry have lost ground in key markets. Some have gained ground, but most notably, perhaps Ecuador has really struggled in the face of alleged findings by Chinese authorities of COVID-19 on imported shrimp packaging and the ensuing ban of several of its companies from the market. And all of those suppliers and buyers reliant on food service have had to quickly find new avenues of demand at retail, delivery, and online purchasing platforms. It's not all bad, of course, and while no one would have wished the pandemic on the industry or any of us, it has accelerated trends of value addition, of branding, traceability, and sustainability, forcing the industry to fast forward into a future that would arguably have happened anyway, eventually. And now, with 2021 upon us, it is feasible, perhaps, that some of the hardship 2020 brought the industry may begin to pay off. These are all themes I will shortly be discussing with our expert panel, but before that, I would like to hand over to our keynote presenter, a familiar face to you all, I imagine, Rabobank Senior Global Specialist for Seafood, Gorjan Nikolic, who's going to look into his crystal ball and give us some thoughts on what the next year might look like for the industry.
My name is Gorjan Nikolic. I work for Rabobank Group, and we are one of the largest global food and agribusiness lenders. And as you can see by this map, pretty much active globally. All right, let's get into the topic. So I thought I'd start first with the big three markets, and they could not have been more different. So let's start with the United States. So this was the best market in 2020, and really shrimp was the winner at retail. Of course, very low price points. This is the Urner-Barry Index, and you can see the price point is really record low, and even starting this year, quite low. But having said that, you know, the United States really picked up shrimp consumption in 2020. And not only in volume, because of course you expect some volume increase due to the low price, but also in total value, there was growth in 2020. So the key question here is, will that greatly expanded retail consumption of shrimp, will that be sticky in 2021 as food service opens up? Something for the panelists to perhaps get deeper into. But no doubt that this will remain the market to be in 2021. Europe. Well, it was a bit of an uneventful, let's say, import-export dynamic. We were down pretty much in volume and also down in value, which you would expect a little bit in the pandemic, right? Shrimp really being affected by the lockdowns and lack of food service sales, and the Europeans did not pick up the same kind of retail consumption of shrimp as we saw in the United States. Now, going into China, and for years, China was the driver of shrimp demand. It was this booming shrimp market, but it was also the most disappointing market of 2020. If you look at this figure in the beginning of 2020, these are overstated. The growth wasn't as much as it looks here, and that's because 2019 is understated. There's still some great trade that is not yet captured by this data. However, the great trade has a very minor role in the second half of the year, and there you see a very big decline, a very significant decline of imports. And it's picking up now. It's getting better, but it's still quite a lot less. And that has to do with, you know, China testing everything, every food item that's imported for COVID. And there's also a real fear among the consumers, afraid to get COVID from shrimp or food packaging even, which is not a rational fear. But, you know, the key thing to observe in 2021 will be how quickly will this fear disappear as people get vaccinated. I mean, we're hopeful, but it will still take at least probably the first half of the year. But, you know, let's see how it goes. So that's the picture of the market. And now let's quickly run through the main suppliers. I've picked out 4. Let's start with Ecuador. They all have their own story. So we'll hear more about Ecuador later, so I'll be brief. I mean, Ecuador is really on a phenomenal growth path. Look at this, basically almost double-digit growth of exports every year. And the only thing that COVID did is really slow down the growth somewhat. We're still positive, 8% year-to-date November, but mind you, this is volume-based exports. So probably production due to the extra processing, I would say probably double-digit growth this year in production, maybe 10, 11%, but maybe the following speakers can shed more light exactly how much that was. And, you know, we really have to give credit to the Ecuadorian industry, how quickly they pivoted when the Chinese imports dropped due to that aforementioned testing. The industry quickly pivoted to Europe and the US, focusing on processing and building that capacity. It didn't take long to switch towards these two markets. And as you can see here, China is also coming back now. So very nimble industry, but I have to say there was also a painful moment here, and certainly a lesson was learned. And the lesson is that maybe relying on China for too long, that much is a risk factor. But let's look at the prices, and I think they shed a light to something very interesting. The farm gate prices for Ecuadorian shrimp crashed more than any other. And look, even now, in the first few weeks of 2021, they're still quite a lot lower, almost 25% lower than they were, back in 2020. But if you see the export value, it only is actually it's up by 1%. So something is strange, and the reason, well, it's not strange. What it really happened is that there is a profit pool shift from the smaller farmers towards those that have processing and export capability. So it's interesting maybe later to discuss what kind of lasting effect this has on the Ecuadorian industry and the structure. Will there be a shift of land from the smaller farmers to the bigger ones? And how will that look like? I think it's a very important structural change that this could create in the country. Going to India, India was actually the most hit country from a supply side. If you remember, there was lockdowns with only 4 or 5 days in advance. And one of the things that actually created is a big supply drop. But it's more than that. India already had stagnating value of export. In fact, since 2017, they haven't grown in value of exports. And 2020 just pushed that number even lower due to a drop in value. And you can see here the real problems were in March and April, but then also in June and July, there were real issues with exporting enough product out of India. For our estimates, India is probably down somewhere 12 to 15% in volume in 2020. I know some people in the market are saying bigger numbers. I can't justify that just yet from the volume of exports. But if there's some inventory, I didn't take that into account. In prices and what's happening now, so the prices in India are actually quite good in the beginning of the year. So that means probably seeding will be quite good. And also you see the real problem, what really the most challenging part for India was in the middle part of the year. Somewhere between, well, actually already from January to May, June, July. But after that, it's starting to normalize. The first bar here is November. This also is November. So we're still below last year, November. But what I understand is that supply side is normalizing somewhat in India. But again, it's important to watch how much can they rebound in 2021. Moving along then to Vietnam. And again, a completely different story here. Vietnam is a country that was also on a good bull run, not as long as the one from Ecuador, but a couple of strong years of increasing sales and again exports, and then again those are interrupted by COVID. Basically, you saw a small decline. At least our data shows a small decline in export volumes and value. This is, by the way, year-to-date October, and I know some local sources from VASIP even would suggest that there could have been a full year growth, or maybe just flat. So Vietnam certainly not as impacted as India, and also we'll see later in prices not as impacted as Ecuador. So sort of a middle ground, a country when it comes to impact. And here's again the price levels. The really two major drops in price in the beginning of the year and also in the second lockdown. But Vietnam has one interesting feature that neither India nor Ecuador nor Indonesia have, is that they are very diverse from a market perspective. They have almost equal sales between EU, US, Japan, South Korea, and they even export to a other group of nations. So they have very good market access and balance between these different export destinations, which, when demand is volatile, that's really an advantage, and certainly it will be an advantage in 2021, especially when they have a good trade relationship with the EU, so that could also be a benefit. And they're starting the year with a good price level, one of the highest price points from the major exporters, although you see here correcting somewhat, but still very good price points. So this will promote growth and optimism in Vietnam. And lastly, from my list of major exporters, we have Indonesia. Now, unlike some of the other producers, Indonesia was not on a strong run previously. This is the year-to-date exports in tons, and they were kind of flat. There is a little bit of a growth, certainly some growth in value. And then you see this big uptick in 2020. And really, if you analyze the data, Indonesia was the main winner of 2020. And it all has to do with their very strong processing industry, but also the problems of Indonesia. If you look at it, every single month, Indonesia exported more volume and at a higher price level. Our data, and this is a reverse export, so we add up all the imports of the major trading partners. We have that Indonesia has had 20% volume and value growth. I think that's a bit too high of a number because there were some smaller countries that were not included in this, and they had less exports. And also the production for the local market has declined, which is significant in Indonesia. So it was probably less than that, maybe 10 or 15% growth. But I know some people out there talk about a decline in Indonesia. I really don't see that in the data. This really was a very strong year for Indonesia, and you also see the government talking about growth and bullish statements. And here's the big plus and the big negative in Indonesia. They rely very heavily on the U.S. And last year, U.S. was the main market to be, and they even they specialize in retail products with a strong processing sector. So it was great to be in the U.S. And look, their price point is pretty much above 2019 in 2020, almost the whole year, except this one drop. But what will happen in 2021? You have Indonesia, you have India probably coming back, you have a strong Ecuador trying to diversify from China, you have the US, which maybe will be opening up towards food service. So there's all things that add up that I think will make difficult for Indonesia to realize the growth plans and momentum that they have due to this great year. So if I put it all together, on the demand side, we got to watch China. If China comes back in a big way, this will be a great year. The other one, we have to look at vaccination and opening up of food service, especially in the U.S. Will that consumption at retail be sticky? When the restaurants open up, will people still buy a lot of shrimp at retail? I think probably some of it will be sticky. And we will have a growing consumption. On the supply side, the good thing is we don't have any major diseases at the moment like we did, let's say, 7 to 10 years ago. So demand is not, so supply is very elastic and will likely respond to a growth in demand. So if I would conclude, I still think that it's going to be a year that will be very competitive, with so many countries either trying to continue the growth or make up for lost ground. So it will be still a buyer's market, and it will be, and this I've said on conferences before, probably there's never been a better year to start communicating towards the market, to educate the consumer, to create more innovative products, to drive demand. Especially when we need convenience now, and we're trying to keep that retail customer that we got during COVID. So those are my key points. I hope it leads you to a nice discussion for the rest of the seminar. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thanks, Gorian. As you say, a buyer's market going into 2021, which throws up some interesting conundrums for the producing end of the industry. But first, before we discuss it in our panel, we're going to hear from our co-host, Nico Vita. Representing them today is the Business Development Manager of their parent company, VitaPro, Alan Cooper. So, Alan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Each of our actions has a consequence. Like what we do today, thinking about a responsible future with sustainable actions. Transforming aquaculture to nourish the future. With responsibility, generating development. Taking care of our biodiversity, always connected to our environment. To protect it, to grow together. Join the movement, review our sustainability report, and discover how you too can take action to transcend.
Great. So it's great to be here with everyone and share the vision that we have of the changes of the industry and how at VitaPro we are working hand in hand with shrimp farmers in order to build towards this new normal. Just a brief note about VitaPro. VitaPro is a leader in Latin America in feed and tech solutions in aquaculture, and shrimp farmers and fish farmers in the region have trusted us for the last 35 years. So just to get into the context of the presentation, it's incredible how fast 2020 went by. Some people say that it flew by, that they didn't even feel it, but definitely for us in the aqua business, 2020 brought a few disruptions. Different ideas, different things, different changes. Some people call it an inflection point. Others call it a new reality. But definitely we're entering into a new normal in the shrimp industry and in many industries as we know them. And in VitaPro, we think that there are three main forces that are changing and shaping the industry today. The first one is the quest for efficiency. Now we have to do the same things or more things with less. And like Goran just said, we are seeing structural change like consolidations and really important changes in the industry that are just looking for efficiencies in this new normal. The second one is the need for market diversification. I think Goran already nailed it when talking about the markets. And right now, we're not just seeing geographical changes in how the shrimp demand is changing, but also we have to adapt to new channels. We have to adapt to retail selling more shrimp. We have to adapt to e-commerce selling more shrimp. And these are radical changes in the industry as we knew it. And finally, but maybe one of the most important ideas or concepts that are shaping the industry today is that today, more than ever, traceability is a must. Traceability is necessary for efficiency. Traceability is necessary for market diversification. And traceability today in the new context is a must, not only for our clients, but for our clients' clients. And if I have to sum up these three ideas just in one big maybe title, I would say that these forces are pushing us towards a more sustainable evolution in how we see the industry today. And as I said, it's not only thinking about our clients today, but also thinking about our clients' clients and what they are demanding. They are not only asking us what we do, but how are we doing things? And that's where sustainability is really having an impact on the industry and on these forces that are shaping it. So at VitaPro, we are working hand in hand with shrimp farmers in having a strong response to these new industry forces and having or developing different capabilities in order to answer them. We are working on three main fronts. The first one is sustainable feed solutions. The second one is digital transformation. And the third one is not only collaboration, but radical collaboration throughout the globe, throughout the industry. Let's dig a little bit deeper into each one of these. When we think about sustainable feed, in the aqua industry, we have a great responsibility. We feed the world with the most sustainable farm protein that there is. And this is going to have even more relevant importance as we move forward. In VitaPro, we are conscious about this, and we work heavily in our R&D investigations, mainly on three big fronts. One is being even more sustainable, working more with our feed conversion, reducing our feed conversion rates in order to give our farmers the opportunity of having more sustainable feed solutions and reducing costs with more efficiency. We're also working on important research for multi-phase systems and for new growth systems that are so important when we think about efficiency. And all of this is thanks to our 5 different research centers that we have throughout the region, where we invest heavily in understanding the new trends and new ideas for shrimp efficiency, traceability, and evolution. Secondly, digital transformation. I find it really amazing how our industry is embracing the digital technology that's available today. In Ecuador, for example, if we just go back 7 years, there were maybe no automatic feeders, and now we have more than 30,000 automatic feeders in Ecuador. I find it inspiring how fast shrimp farmers and throughout the value chain, we have been able to adapt to new technologies that are helping us in this new normal. And we're not only talking about feeding, we're talking about blockchain for traceability, and we're talking about big data, new technology, artificial intelligence that's helping us with the industry's main goal, have a more cost-efficient production. And in VitaPro, we have really embraced the technological revolution. Today, we have just deployed our new farm management platform called Genia, where we're working with IA to predict and recommend feeding systems for our farmers. Everything through your laptop and your tablet or cell phone. But that's not all. We're also really thinking about technology as the next frontier for the industry. And this year, we've started our new VitaPro Ventures digital development ecosystem. We're working with global partners. We're working with startups, entrepreneurs, and really finding different technological solutions for the pains of our customers, for the pains of the industry in general. We think that technology will probably be the answer for many of the pains that the industry has today. And we're already seeing it in other industries, like in VitaPro Chile, in the salmon business, where we have had many learnings in technology and have thrown all these learnings into the capabilities of our new shrimp farming platforms. Lastly, we don't talk about only collaboration. We talk about radical collaboration. We talked about interacting with different industry players, relating to external organizations, universities, think tanks, and also thinking about a very important concept maybe in this new normal, thinking about not only our clients, but our clients' clients, and what they need and how we can collaborate with them to have a better value proposal for the industry as a whole. With this, at VitaPro, we are working in a people-centered approach. We have our client at the heart of our strategy, and we're looking for different partnerships at different industry levels. For example, we're working globally with other major feed players in different contexts for better sustainability practices. We're working in Ecuador with universities to find better sustainable solutions. And we're working with global partners, like the agreement that we just signed with ASC, one of the most important certifications in our industry, to help shrimp farmers in Latin America to improve their sustainable processes. We really believe in collaboration. We really believe in that with collaboration, together, we can have a better sustainable industry. So I probably already talked a lot, but if I have to sum up the main takeaways of my presentation, I would say that firstly, we should all keep searching for more sustainable solutions. Sustainability has to be in the core of all our value proposals into the future. Secondly, let's embrace the potential of the digital world. Don't be afraid of big names like big data, artificial intelligence, data analytics. I know they sometimes sound complicated, but I think the potential is there to embrace it and to really thrive with all what technology can bring to the industry, as we have seen in the previous examples. And finally, collaborate, radically collaborate. You would be amazed by how, by opening frontiers and setting up a network, we can share different ideas with people that are already embarked in journeys similar to ours. Count on us, count on VitaPro if you want to keep exploring the different alternatives that we are working on in order to improve the sustainability of our industry. We thrive in collaborating with industry players and with our clients. In fact, just not long ago, I was a client of VitaPro and Ecovita. And now that I have seen the company through both lenses, I am proud to say that VitaPro really takes the client at the heart of the strategy, now more than ever in this new normal, and that we are happy to share our purpose in everything we do. And right now, before I end, I would really love to invite you to join us in our purpose. Our purpose of transforming aquaculture to nourish the future. A future that I'm sure will find the aqua industry stronger and more ready than ever to step up to the challenge of feeding the world in the most sustainable way. So the invitation is open, and thank you, everyone, for this presentation.
Thank you, Alan, and thanks once again for the support from VitaPro and from Ecovita with this event. Without further ado, I'm now going to ask our panelists to switch on their webcams and join me here on screen as I do some introductions. I'm also going to say at this point that we will hopefully have a small amount of time at the end of the panel discussion for an audience question or two. So if you have questions as you go along, please write them into the Q&A box that you should see on the bottom left of your screen. We are lucky enough to have with us today 5 shrimp industry experts from different parts of the world, different parts of the supply chain. I have to thank some of them for staying up late and some of them for getting up early to be here, so it's much appreciated. So to introduce them, we have Tanyawat Kasamsuan, or Dr. Nud, as he is better known, Group Director for Global Innovation at our union in Bangkok. We have Werner Joost, CEO at Camanor Productos Marinhos in Brazil. We have Yahira Piedrahita, Executive Director at Ecuador's National Chamber of Aquaculture. We have Willem van der Pil, founder at Shrimp Insights. And we have Bill Honig, Vice President of Sales and Operations at Delta Aquaculture in the US. Welcome all of you, and thank you for joining us. I will ask, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your mic, that would really help with the quality of the sound. Thank you. So I hate to do it, but we can't really start this discussion, I don't think, without mentioning COVID and its impacts. As Gorian pointed out there, it's changed quite a lot in the industry, and some really important trends have come out of it, some of which are likely to stick around for a while. As Gorian said in his presentation, those that were able to switch to retail channels quickly and without too much cost were definitely the winners of 2020. Indonesia is standing out there, I think. What I want to ask the panelists is, will this trend stick as we go into 2021 and beyond? And what should producers be doing to change their processing, their end products, to take full advantage? I'm going to start with Dr. Nud at Thai Union. Because Thai Union is obviously a huge shrimp supplier, and I know they're innovating quite heavily in their end products going into 2021. Maybe you can tell us about that, Dr. Nud.
Yeah, we still believe that 2021 we still have to stay with COVID, okay, at least for a large portion of the year. So a lot of demanding products mix, consumers, will not switch dramatically back to the old normal. Okay, I would say the new norms still stay, As you can imagine that with the COVID, a lot of change, consumer requiring to do a lot more cooking at home, staying home. So a lot of new products that allow consumers to using product at home easily, particularly in seafood that normally consumers are not comfortable to cook at home, definitely will stay. Okay. We believe the restaurant will slowly pick up after the vaccination have been increased, but it's still not going to be back to, I would say 2019 level. So it would take a while before it gets back. Product for health and wellness will stay. I think that's why a lot of change to more innovations of products that requiring more, I would say, convenience to consumers. I think and I think that will help. Whether how dramatically shift in 2021, I think have to be seen. I think that's what we anticipating, at least from a Thai Union standpoint.
Bill, let me come to you. What is the US market looking for now, differently post-COVID than it was before?
I don't think that it's really looking for anything different. And let's parse a little bit what on Corjan's presentation. It looks like United States consumed a lot of shrimp, but when you look at numbers into United States, let's start with that. When you look at numbers into United States, you're looking at import numbers, and there's a tremendous amount of inventory still left. So there was a lot of imports, there was a lot of consumption, but we don't have really good numbers as to exactly how much of that shrimp was or those products were consumed. I can tell you that on the shrimp side, it is a great value as compared to other proteins, and as just mentioned, it is a product that is easily cooked at home. So it's a very natural product for the retail market. Now, having said that, there are certain product forms that are necessary for retail. You want IQF, you want PND, you want easy peels and those kinds of things that are not necessarily, and in a retail bag, that are not necessarily the food service presentation. So what we expect is that, number one, the consumption at home is going to stick to a great degree. We found out in 2020 that people do cook seafood at home. And what you'll also see is countries that, like Ecuador, that were not doing a whole lot of peeling or value adding, to use just that word, are very rapidly migrating into that. Keep in mind, Ecuador was one of the main suppliers of peeled shrimp 10, 15 years ago. They went away from that with China, but they're coming back very quickly, as are many other countries.
Werner, I'm interested to hear from you. With this higher emphasis on sort of value addition and eating shrimp at home, can Brazil compete in the US market on a more value-added basis when you're competing against countries like Indonesia and Vietnam, for example?
At the moment, Brazil doesn't export any shrimp because our strong point always was to export shrimp on a whole shrimp to Europe and other countries around Europe. And what we have now is a ban on all seafood to Europe because of an issue in vessels, in fishing vessels. So it's a pity that our main market is closed. And we try to export to China, but we are not on the list for China to export Vaname. So this market is closed as well. So I think your question was, are we competitive enough to export to United States? I think we are not, because value added was always a weak point in Brazil for processing, because our labor is not sufficient productive. So just to have an idea, a person works in a processing plant maybe 8 hours, but effective work is maybe about 4.5, 5 hours, because we have to stop, for example, every 50 minutes, and they have to do 10 minutes of gymnastics, paper gymnastics. So this interrupts all this production. So you can imagine that productivity is very low. So for us, the main strong point in the industry was always to export whole shrimp.
Yeah, I'm wondering then if we sort of move away from the processing end in terms of value addition, is there a more production-based change that needs to happen in the shrimp sector to cater to new post-COVID markets? The demand for certain sizes, for example, or species even changed. Black tiger obviously used to be quite an important species. India was farming quite a lot of it. It had a strong market in Europe. Does that have a stronger future post-COVID than it did before, or different sizes of shrimp? Willem, I'm going to put that one to you because I know you have some experience in Southern Asia.
Yeah, I think the European market is much more difficult to read than the American market, maybe because it's so diverse. No? So in one country, we have seen a real shift towards retail consumption in Belgium, for example, but in the Netherlands, we have not at all. You are right, Rachel. I think the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany are the largest markets for black tiger shrimp in Europe, together with the UK. But it's really a wholesale product. No, black tiger shrimp is not a retail product. So if consumption is pushed towards retail, that means actually that black tiger shrimp has less of a position in the European market. I would say, and that's also the main question that's in my mind is whether in the next couple of months, once restaurants open again, will consumption move back to food service, or will we maintain the same level of retail sales? Because if it moves back to food service, it means that we will get a more or less back to normal supply pattern as well, I guess, because still all the infrastructure is there. But if retail consumption continues to be this high, especially for India, it might be really difficult to, even if it increases production, to retake its share that it lost, for example, to Indonesia. So yeah, for me, one of the main doubts that I have is really on making any prediction is really like Bill was just saying, well, we expect that at-home consumption will stay high once restaurants open again, but I'm not so sure about that, especially not in Europe. And without answering that question, I think it's very difficult to really make any prediction on the supply dynamic this year.
As you say, that's the ultimate question. Do these trends stick going into 2021, or do they fall back behind and get replaced by an older system again? Yahira, turning to you, still on markets. The Ecuadorian shrimp industry has had a really rough ride in 2020. I think it's fair to say it's so reliant on China as a market, and it's had all kinds of struggles there, inevitably. But what lessons has Ecuador learned from last year that it will be applying in 2021?
Well, we have many lessons learned last year. The first one is we need to react speed very fast to the requirement of the market. China was changing the rule of the market for us for a few times. First, they were requesting free diseases animals, IHNV and white spot free animals, even for consumption. It's not live animal or any other use than food. And then they closed some companies because of COVID presence on external packaging, and we have to react very quick to that. And the other thing is we need to find some new markets, not only China. We have been growing again to US and also keeping leading the export to Europe, so we have to work also new market. Probably Korea is a very good option for us, also Japan and some other important consumers. Let me clarify, China is still the most important market for Ecuadorian shrimp right now. We want to keep that market and doing good business with them, but we are only also looking for some other markets.
it brings me around to branding, which is something I wanted to talk about. I mean, salmon producers, we always compare these two industries, but salmon producers have moved increasingly towards branding their product and have seen benefits from it in a lot of markets. Is there a future there for shrimp too? I mean, it's very much a commodity product right now in most places. Dr. Nud, I know you have some thoughts on this, and Thai Union is sort of working in this area.
But when you talk about the branding, I think that's a topic that's close to my heart, because I always looking how we can differentiate the shrimps. Okay, shrimp today considers commodities. People buy, head on, head off, peel on peel, and you see that people don't recognize the value of the brand in shrimps. And you start to see a lot of shrimp companies, including Thai Union, starting to looking at opportunities to branding it with quality, with safety, quality, and some of them is with innovation. For example, we have a live prawn, our live shrimps, which is boiled live shrimps, so freshly cooked shrimps, and I think that we brand it in Thailand and multiple other countries as well. We work with key customers, which actually having a brand. I think that be able to demanding some differentiation to that, and I think recognizing consumers starting to would like to have the brand that they can trust. Okay, and I think that's I still believe that there is a rooms and opportunities for shrimps to have a brand. Again, it have to drive with some differentiation that consumers see the value of that, and I think that through innovation on quality.
But on that same theme, I suppose, when we're talking about shrimp being sustainable and traceable, there are some challenges there. There are very small-scale farms. It's difficult to have full traceability. I know there's technologies coming into play there that will help. But I'm wondering, and it's sort of a provocative question, but is the future of farmed shrimp in secure, contained, recirculating aquaculture systems on land, close to market? We've seen salmon companies do it. We've seen the likes of CP Foods investing in this technology in the US with a new farm there. But does this production have a legitimate future in the shrimp farming industry? And if so, on what scale? And I'm going to throw that question out there to anyone who has a view on that. Bill, maybe you have a view on that. You've been in the aquaculture industry for years.
It's a subject near and dear to my heart. So our closed systems have a future, absolutely. Are they going to be the entire future? I don't think so. When you look at it from the standpoint, let's just take Ecuador, for example, which has been subject of great discussion. They have a huge infrastructure that has in place. It's been paid off 20 to 25 years ago. It works, and it works very well. Ecuador has been growing their production for 17 years straight. Estimates are that Ecuador can double their production without adding a single hectare, just by, as Alan Cooper was talking about, automatic feeders, better genetics, better feed, etc. So there is a component of world production that is working and will probably continue to be. Then there is the issue of control, and for control, you want smaller systems, and these smaller systems are starting to crop up everywhere. You're seeing very intensive systems in Guatemala, for example, that mirror what CP is doing in Thailand. You have CP that is doing the RAS type operations. Of course, Werner could probably tell us a lot more about those closed systems. So I would say that we need to be cautiously optimistic about these closed systems. They still have some issues to solve. And in particular, when you're putting closed systems on what you consider wealthy nations, somebody's going to have to process that shrimp. And you can only sell fresh head-on shrimp for so long. And when you think about it, salmon is easy. You have an 8-kilo salmon, there's automation for that. 8 kilos of shrimp on a 21-25 is 363 shrimp. So somebody's going to have to dehead that. Somebody's going to have to peel it. Somebody's going to have to do something with that. And so these are the things that are going to have to be resolved or dealt with as we go forward with some of these systems that are close to market.
So Werner, I'll ask you there, since Bill suggested you would know better. What are your thoughts on these land-based contained systems? Do they have a big future?
We are talking maybe as these land-based systems in Europe or in the United States, and I think they are very expensive because they are race-based. So I think these filtration systems are extremely expensive. And what we can see in Switzerland, for example, there is a company producing locally, but they sell it at maybe $80 a kilo. So it's a very, very small niche market. And so the high volumes still will come from outside, from, I think, development countries which have a higher temperature and everything. So we are looking with our system, our production system, to emulate like high density and enclosed, lined, the greenhouses. And we work with about 300 to 400 animals per square meter. And it's not a RAS system, so every organic matter we produce, we reprocess in the system. So in the pond and in the recircle area and in a special pond where the tilapia is, we can like reduce all the organic matter, and so we can reuse the water all the time in the cycle and between the cycles. So we have maybe economy of water use about 99%. But still, it's not RAS, so we don't have a filtration system, so it's cheaper, but it's still an expensive system. And what we are looking for years is to get a protocol where we can say, if you follow the protocols, then you can produce in any way and in any place. And this we haven't found yet. We are still working on this, because I think it's only possible to have vertically integrated big companies producing shrimp if you have protocols like, for example, in salmon, or you can have in chicken. Maybe 95% of the chicken protocols are predefined, so maybe 5% is to local locations or because the owner has a special idea. But the rest is predefined, and we have to get to this point as well in the shrimp farming industry, that we can work with protocols, and we can say, when you do these protocols, you can produce in high densities. And I think the main problem at the moment with our system, the aqua science, is that it's based on 3 pillars. The one is our system, which we call aqua science, and then you use SPF larvae. You need SPF larvae. And up to now, Brazil was not able to get SPF larvae. We have a partner in our company, which is CPF, and the idea was always in the beginning that we could import the animals from Thailand. And we fought about 2 years with the government. Now it's okay, we can import, but they put a special difficulty in it because we are not allowed to bring the broodstock in and bring it to the lab. They want us to produce in the quarantine a new batch called F1, which is the first generation, and then raise this first generation as broodstock in the hatchery. So we will lose about 1 year, and we risk that these animals get infected and they lose their status of SPF. And the third point, which we at the moment can't make happen, is that we need a special high-density feed, high-quality feed. And what we have now in Brazil is just feed for low density, or maybe the density of 50 animals per square meter. But we need a special feed to get our animals grow 3-4 grams a week. And this is not yet. So you can imagine like a huge puzzle, and the system only works if all the puzzles are in the right place. And these 2 big puzzles are missing at the moment, which is the SPF post larvae with a high health, and a feed which makes us able to grow shrimp on 3-4 grams. So this has an impact on fixed cost as well. So as Bill said, the low density traditional production is still very competitive. And it's amazing how over all this time and all these challenges, this system has remained. We have a traditional farm as well, a small one, 150 hectares. But we can produce on this farm with about $1.3 total production cost. So that's very low. And it's extremely difficult to work on a high-density system where you can get to these low costs. So it's a real challenge for us at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. That gives us some real perspective on that particular issue. And you also brought up some other topics there that I wanted to touch on, vertical integration in the industry and also feed challenges, I guess. But first, maybe a broader question about technology, which all comes into play here. The shrimp industry is sort of historically quite low tech, but as we've seen, there's all kinds of new technologies that are now coming into play in the last few years that seem sort of really feasible and affordable for shrimp farmers to bring into their operations using artificial intelligence and smartphones and IoT. Are producers ready to enter a more technically advanced future? What are the hurdles there, and where do you think uptake will be fastest? Dr. Nud, I'm going to start with you there because I know Thai Union's been working on that area as well.
Yeah, we starting only about a year ago with a startup company called Hydroneos. I think thanks to them that having a technology that allow the farmer smart farming system, and I think that's actually I would say still early. A lot of hurdles to the farmer to adapting it. I think first of all, the farmers don't want to invest. I think that's the first thing. I think we have to understanding that any investment for them without proving technology, for them approving technology means have to be proving in a very short term. And as you can imagine, all that requires time, with the data and all kind of things. So I think I think the model is so important. First of all, the company that we work with, Hydroneos, is be able to save the energy consumptions of the shrimp farm up to 50% in some of the farm. The lowest one in the Thai Union farm is approximately about 20-25%, which is we are operating very well already. So we believe that we are one of the top operators. So be able to, even that, we still can be able to save energy 25%, which is actually quite substantial. So the payback is only a few months. When we put in that, I think Hydroneo have been tested and actually even allowed to be tested. And with that, the farmers, when they see the outcome are so fast, I would say that that's past the first hurdles. But when we ask the farm, to start to understand about how this be AI, IoT, say the quality of the trims, they don't really actually interest as long as you can really, show the result out quickly. So getting the first machine, which actually the first machine to be able to get into the pond, be able to save the energy, then adapting all the other technology in. That's the game that we are playing here, and I think that get a lot of exciting and reception of the farmer. But it took us quite a long time originally to try to convince the farmer to get the machine into the pond. So I think that's the experience we have in Thai Unions.
Yeah, as you say, it's all about showing that return as quickly as possible in order to convince people. I'm interested to hear as well about what's going on with tech in South and Central American production. Mihira, Bill, Werner, whoever would like to jump in here, what is the most useful technology for you guys down in South and Central America right now? And are there gaps in technology that need to be filled as far as you can see?
Well, thanks, Rachel. Farmers in Ecuador start using automatic feedings and also aerators, but we have to look at the connection for the technology and also the energy source. Most of the farms in Ecuador are operating under fuel oil pumping, so they need a source of electricity, or they are using solar panels for automatic feeders. So we are working on that. There is a government project for electric supply into the farming areas. So we are waiting for the project to advance in an important level. But most of the farms are trying at least to use automatic feeding and also mechanical aeration, and also the middle and big companies are already using as a normal part of the operation. So we are looking for the technology as VitaPro also show in the presentation.
One of the bigger challenges, it was just mentioned, number one is convincing the farmers that it's an investment, not an expense, as far as this new technology. But second of all, what we found is a totally different mindset as to the type of person that you have working at the farm. They're not laborers anymore, which is kind of the tradition that we've seen up till now. It's just somebody that's going to sling that sack of food and put it in the canoe and get out there and feed the shrimp. The moment that you start going down the path of this technology, now you need technicians. And that involves a tremendous amount of human resource development, which is good. I mean, it's very satisfying, it's very challenging. And then also is the fact that when you start using these new technologies, it's all a question of sensors. My family in Mexico, they're cattlemen. And we have a big discussion with my cousins because he can go out there and count his cows. Try counting 2.5 million shrimp in a 5-acre pond. It's a totally different, and so sensors are very important, which generate a tremendous amount of data, which then has to be analyzed, which take you right into artificial intelligence. So all these things, as Werner was saying, they're all components that come into play. And so, yeah, technology is great. Training the people to use it effectively is one of the bigger jobs, so to speak.
Sure, and obviously, sort of a big area of technology, sort of indirectly, I guess is feed, and then more broadly, sort of the issues with disease in the shrimp industry. I mean, it's historically the shrimp industry has been impacted really heavily by disease, and it happens suddenly. It seems to get out of control very quickly. And we've seen whole sectors of the industry, I mean, almost obliterated over the years. What technology is going to change that cycle? Or is it technology, or is it feed? What is it that's going to stop that from happening? And Werner, I'll go to you first, because I know Brazilian production sort of saw a remarkable recovery from white spot a few years back. But what were the key points in that recovery, and how do we stop that happening again?
Rachel, the main problem at the moment is that we have a new search on IMV. IMV has been first noted in Brazil in 2003, and it has been a disease really originated in Brazil. I think later on it spelled to Indonesia. But what we have now is a new strain of IMV, which is much more aggressive. And I think that came from illegal imports of broodstock, because the government makes it so complicated to import SPF broodstock officially, legally, that people just started to import not broodstock, but at least Nauplii and post-larvae. And we got a strain from Saudi Arabia, which is not tolerant to IMV. And these animals have been used during some cycles, and what happens is that they come to the farm and get infected by IMV, which is present in all farms, I think, in Brazil. And they went back as broodstock again to the hatchery and came back again to the farm. And now, after 3 or 4 generations, we have a huge problem in IMV, that the survival is going down. And it seems that the virus is getting more and more aggressive because these animals are not tolerant. And I think we have to change really the mindset even of the smaller farmers, because everybody just looks for solutions, but just for 6 months or 3 months, and he doesn't think about what will happen in the long run with the industry. So I think Brazil will only go ahead if we can really import officially SPF broodstock, and and people give value to this health status, because most of the farmers, they are not interested in PCR tests, and they don't like charge the hatcheries about what health status the larvae has. So what we can see is that the hatchery launches a new line. This is very good and very special, but they have no idea what happens in the farm. They just sell it and see after 3-4 months what happened in the farm. So this is not an industry. This is like cows. And as Brazil has only 20,000 hectares, very different to Ecuador with 200,000, we have to work with productivity. So if we can't get the health issue on board and everybody be really interested and committed to hatcheries which produce healthy broodstock, I think the industry will have a lot of problems in the future, unfortunately.
Yeah, you raised broodstock there. Willem, I know you've done some research on sort of broodstock and what's happening with that section of the industry. How important is that to combating disease and other issues in the sector?
Yeah, I think it's a crucial development, of course, and a lot of things are happening. I would say competition between the main genetics companies is rapidly increasing. The number of companies that's involved is increasing, and they are all at the moment like diversifying their genetic lines. So while before most of the companies just had one genetic line, which was looking for the perfect balance between growth and survival, now they are all diversifying those lines, and they have one line focusing on growth, one line focusing on survival, and with each line they target, of course, a specific group of farmers. So I think that's a really good development from the farmer perspective and for the hatchery perspective, because it means that as this trend continues and as DNA technology allows these companies to much more detailedly breed one type of shrimp or the other, it will mean that each farmer, or maybe each farmer is a bit much, but each type of farmer can actually look for the best matching solution. But as Werner just already said, like regulatory issues are a real bottleneck, because some countries, for example, India, doesn't allow broodstock imports from Thailand, just like Brazil. So that means that CP can, for example, not access the Indian market. And these kind of regulatory issues are a real bottleneck, I would say, for how rapidly these companies can actually roll out their programs in the countries where they are needed.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ingredients to a successful shrimp supply chain, as you say. It's highly complex. But I do just want to come back to feed, because I know there's been some innovational feeds coming into the industry. Dr. Nud, I'm going to come back to you on that.
You know, there's so many directions on feed, but I think we'll share one sustainable side. Okay, we're looking for a group of consumers who right now really driving to have more sustainable products. As you can imagine, they're looking to trims as one of way to find the trims that more sustainable. So feed playing a pivotal a part of the sustainability of shrimp. And so we're working with the company Carista to come up with the feed that generating out from a methane productions. We're also working with the insect company, because we are aware about that is less sustainable in terms of consumption. So I think it's more sustainable and use less demanding of natural resources. We're also looking for even deeper to say that can we produce the shrimp which is carbon neutral. So you hear a lot about using a solar cell in the farm, which means they have to be more or less, almost no consumption of energy, and the feed also have to come from more sustainable. So we'll be able to providing carbon neutral shrimps. I think we have seen that consumers have actually asked for it. I think today it's still quite hard to be able to produce that level, but I think that's a kind of an ultimating difficult for us to be able to come up with the most sustainable trends, I think. But absolutely, it's going to be a group of consumers who can affording that, who willing to pay for that. Whether that's going to be a mass, I think we will have to see. I think, but we believe in the trends of consumer have demanding that, and I think that's what consumer asks for. So the feed will play a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all very important stuff. I do want to slightly shift the subject because we're pretty much out of time, but I am going to keep going because this is interesting. But I do just want to shift briefly to investment. The shrimp industry, we've talked about how different it is from the salmon farming industry that has seen a lot of investment. Companies can't seem to help but jump into salmon farming right now. It's obviously sort of a lucrative industry to outsiders, but why do we not see that so much in shrimp? What is it that puts investors off? Why aren't we seeing publicly listed companies? What is it that needs to change in the shrimp industry in order for that to happen? Bill, let's start with you.
Well, look, salmon is, think about this. Salmon is like OPEC. There's very few places that you can produce salmon. And right now, so you have Northern Scotland, you have Norway, Chile, the usual suspects. And so it's a very concentrated industry. And so it's much more stable. Keep in mind, and shrimp, on the other hand, is you take the 37th parallel north, 37th parallel south, and just about every country in the world is producing shrimp. And it's incredibly fragmented. And as you just mentioned, because of disease and this and that, it's also incredibly risky, particularly when you're looking at the fact that the margins are much less than they used to be. 80s, 90s, we were, 40% return on investment was the norm. You're much less than that. So if you have a catastrophic crop failure now, is the impact as far as recovery is much different than it was in the 80s, 90s, and even in the early 2000s. So the way I see, or personal opinion, the model at which the shrimp industry is going to be going, and is going, with a few exceptions, is kind of like the chicken model or the poultry model in the United States, where you have large companies that are doing the marketing, they're doing the processing, the value adding, et cetera, and then in combination with feed mills and the genetics, et cetera, are providing the farmers with the seed stock, with the feed, with the capital for them to raise the shrimp and then sell it or funnel it into these processing marketing companies. I think, you're seeing that's a model pretty much that you see in Asia. Latin America is a little different. Latin America, there's much more vertical integration, but that's because of how it started back in the 80s, 90s. The investment that you're going to see now, and I had a long discussion with Dr. George Chamberlain yesterday about this, is green investment. There are lots of funds out there looking for projects that are going to have an impact on climate change, sustainability, et cetera. And the investment, I see that's where the investment is going to come from going forward. As far as vertically integrated, making plays like the salmon folks did, again, there's a few companies that have that vertical integration in Latin America and maybe a couple in Asia. But once you start getting far afield, it just becomes very fragmented.
Does there need to be more consolidation in the shrimp industry in order to attract this investment? And where do you think that's going to happen first?
Consolidation, it's hard on shrimp because, and Willem just identified the fact that, just look at the genetics of how many different kinds of farming technologies there are, methods, countries, cultures. And so you can buy a shrimp farm in Honduras and it's going to be totally different than what you're looking at in India and other areas. So, that type of consolidation on the farming side, on the production side, is very challenging. we took a look at it, and we didn't think we could make it work across a broad spectrum of producing areas. We just looked at it and thought it was better left to the folks on the ground, and then work a way as to how you cooperate with them from the standpoint of securing supply by, again, providing the seed stock, providing technical know-how, investment in technology, investment in feed, etc., rather than going out and buying the farm itself.
Well, fantastic insight, everybody. Thank you so much to all our panelists, again, for staying up late, coming in early. I wish we'd had longer to discuss. It seems like we could probably do a whole other webinar on this. There's so much going on. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our presenters, to Gorian and to Alan, and to our sponsors too, of course. There are several handouts on the On24 screen that you can take a look at. You can also catch IntraFish, obviously, 24/7 on IntraFish.com, also on every social media platform you can possibly think of. And we also do a weekly podcast, which you can catch us on. We will be doing more digital events this year. This is the first of several. You can go to our events page to check those out. But until the next one, everybody, thanks for joining us. Thanks again to the panelists, and stay safe, and see you the next time.